Today I'm visiting the Berlin-Ichthyosaur State Park. I like to visit ghost towns and sites of historic interest, but when I found this place, I got more than I bargained for. There's not just one ghost town here, there are two, Berlin and Union, Nevada. And as the name would suggest, the Berlin-Ichthyosaur State Park also has ichthyosaur fossils dating back 225 million years. There's a lot of interesting stuff to see here, but before I even got to the official entrance, there was already something I had to see. Just up ahead is the Diana Mine, and according to the map, this building up ahead is the Blacksmith shop. Yep, it is the Blacksmith shop, and there's more information here. Hand drill bits were of the utmost importance to the miners. These tools were made of hardened, high-quality steel. Their blades featured a steep angle of attack, and only experienced blacksmiths were capable of the involved forge sharpening process. Blacksmiths became prized employees among mining companies. All right, well, there's some more information about the Diana mine here. Look up on the hill above the entrance to the Diana mine and you can see exploration pits with exposed portions of a white quartz vein. This is the rock that held the gold and silver that the miners were seeking. Assays told them that it should be profitable to mine this particular vein. They could have started mining the vein from there, but since the vein is nearly vertical, it would have meant always hoisting men, equipment, waste rock, and ore up and down a mine shaft. Instead, they chose to start lower on the hillside and tunnel horizontally through worthless dirt and rock until they intersected the vein. This way, they could use rail carts to move their equipment, waste rock, and ore. So far, the company had made no return on their investment, and it was probably costing them about $3 per foot to dig the tunnel. This was at a time when a reasonable wage for a miner was $3 to $4 a day. Apparently it's unknown how much profit this mine made because it was a private company and the records were not public information. The mine had 8 levels and water was encountered in the lower levels. Wow. This mine shaft is not very tall. I'm 5'11", and I'd have to crouch down quite a bit to walk around in there without smacking my head. That's really cool that they still have the rails for these ore carts, and actual ore carts too. Well, now it's time to go and see the rest of this place. So this is where you pay the entry fee, $5 for Nevada vehicles and $10 for out-of-state vehicles. You can pay with cash or check. There's a map you can download online. In fact, it's this map. You can download it in PDF format, and then everything is numbered, so it will tell you what each building is, or at least what it was. And each building has a little plaque on it so you can get more information. So I'm going to have a little walk around, and I think I'm going to start behind me because the number 1 on this map is the park ranger office right over there. So this is now the park ranger's office, but it used to be the mine superintendent's home. Mr. Bowen, the mine superintendent, believed in dealing with his fellow men with justice and understanding, but he could not be deterred from administering his duties for the company conscientiously. In 1907, when the miners struck for a raise in pay from $3.50 to $4 per day, and the values in the ore were too low to grant the raise and continue operation of the property at a profit, he shut down the mine. The miners reasoned that if he was out of the way, their chances for obtaining the raise would be enhanced. They escorted him to the bottom of the hill and told him to keep going. During the night, he walked back to Berlin and, without being noticed, hitched up the company-owned team and buggy. He then drove to Tonopah and returned in a few days with the sheriff and regained control of the property. Wow. I did a lot of research before I came out here, but I did not see this story online. So there's cool, a lot of old artifacts out here, an old lantern, some bottles, broken pieces of bottles, little metal boxes, cans. Well, let's take a peek in the window and see what we can see. Well, this is the ranger's office, and it does say visitor center, but unfortunately the door is locked right now, so I could only peek in the windows to get a look at what's in there. So behind the park office, which used to be the superintendent's house, there is an outhouse. Take a quick peek at that. I always find it interesting when you see an old outhouse and there's more than one seat. I know things may have been culturally different back in the day, but I don't think I'd want to sit that close to someone when I was doing my business. So the outhouse is there, and the more modern bathroom is right over here, but the more modern bathroom is really just a slightly updated version of the outhouse. I'll spare you looking inside, but you can take my word for it. It's just a toilet seat on top of an open pit. All right, so I'm going to walk this trail, and we'll see the map and the different plaques. And you can see behind me there's a lot of buildings, but in this stretch there are multiple plaques with no actual structures. There are some spots where there are ruins and debris, and others that have been completely reclaimed by nature. Each plaque has a little information about the person, family, or business that occupied the building that once stood there. One house belonged to a nurse who was also a photographer and developed her own photos. Another building was a bunkhouse for bachelor miners. There was a house that belonged to a guy who had the first record player in town, and people would come over to listen to music. There was also a house for a forest ranger whose responsibility was to make sure no trees were cut down, other than those selected and stamped by the Forest Service. Well, I haven't been looking at the map. I've just been walking around and reading the signs, the plaques, but I think this is probably the town cemetery. I don't think there's actually a whole lot left here to see. Even though residents of the town who passed away were buried here, I don't think there are many headstones left or anything that would indicate who is buried here. Well, there is a headstone here, and it looks like it has a name on it. Looks like Goldsworth. And I can't quite make out what that says. There are some words on there. Well, there is a little bit more down here, and then we'll head back up and take a look at the rest of those buildings up there. So this looks like a grave that no longer has a headstone, and there are a few more that still do. This is sad. There's a grave for a baby, and this is the last one that has a readable headstone on it. Oh wow, this one was also a baby that was just a few months old. Oh, that's, I can see the name now, Josephine Ascargorta. They mentioned that one on the plaque up where their house used to be. P.M. Ascargorta home. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. P.O. Ascargorta, lived on this spot from the fall of 1906 until July 1908. The crumbling dugout nearby was their root cellar. The outhouse, politely referred to in those days as a water closet, was north of the cellar. The space between the outhouse and the home was the chopping and storage area for stove wood. The fourth child in the family was born here. She died 5 weeks later. A simple rite was conducted in the parlor, It included a hymn sung by our neighbors Elizabeth and Henrietta Joseph. Little Josephine's remains lie peacefully in the local cemetery below town. I think now it's time to go back up there and look at the rest of those buildings. All right, I've made my way back up the hill most of the way, getting close to these other buildings again, so we'll get a closer look at some of that machinery over there. I'm not sure what this was, but it was motorized. Looks like there's some electronics in there. A couple of spark plugs. Saw blade. This looks like it was what remains of an old wagon. Even has some leaf springs on it for shock absorbing. It looks like a rubber tire, but it's very hard. This building has seen better days, that's for sure. Let's go around to the other side and have a peek through the window. Trying to show you what I can while minimizing glare as much as possible. Well, there's a tremendous amount of glare, but hopefully you can see some of the stuff. Well, how was that? I hope you could see some of that. Foster's Blacksmith Shop. Bill and Mac Foster moved this building to here from Ellsworth. It was used as a blacksmith shop by them when they were prospecting in this area for about 20 years, preceding the year 1954. It's interesting because this town had a couple of different booms and busts over the years, but some people stayed here for more than just a few months or a year or two while things were good. Some people really stuck it out and tried to make something happen here. 20 years. Watson's house. W.J. Watson, who was postmaster and store manager, lived in this house with his daughter, Mrs. Reston, and his granddaughter Zoe. He liked to take a drink of beer occasionally. In order not to be involved in an embarrassing situation, he would give my father $1 and ask him to purchase 4 bottles of beer with it. He would reward Dad by giving him 1 bottle and saying in Spanish, "Tres para mí y uno para usted," which means 3 for me and 1 for you. Mr. Watson was kind and helpful to everybody. I'd like to try to take a peek in the window, but they've got it boarded up with a piece of OSB. And this house right next door is currently a private residence. One of the park employees lives here. So next we'll head uphill a little more and take a look at those buildings. This one just says a home. This was a bachelor's quarters in 1906. That year the Italian occupants staged a lively 4th of July celebration. Accordion music emanated from within, and wine flowed freely. Again and again someone appeared at the open door to empty a 6-shooter into the air, thereby accentuating the merrymaking within the house. The following year, Felix Ascargorta moved in with his family and made this their home until the camp shut down. So that Escargorta name was down at one of those places where there used to be a house. Now I think we should take a look at the house right next door. Made for very short people. This one also just says a home. Mrs. Stevens moved into this house after her former home, located between the Watson and Phillips houses in the next row below, had burned to the ground. She fed boarders to support her family of 2 boys and 2 girls living with her. 2 other sons were grown men. One of them, David, owned the Cloverdale Ranch, 30 miles south of here. All right, well, there are a few more buildings over this way. We'll take a look at those, and there's a bunch more up that way. Those buildings look a lot more modern, so I think we'll go ahead and look at these other ones. There's a very large building over there, a few more over there to look at, so I guess I'll start over there with the smaller ones and work my way up to the big boy. Okay, this building was the Assay office. Samples of rock and ore from the mine and samples of concentrates from the mill were processed or assayed here to determine the amount of values they contained. The furnace in this assay laboratory used charcoal because it was the only clean burning fuel produced locally. The night watchman used this office to warm himself and to rest in after each trip through town on lookout for thieves and fires. He also ate his midnight lunch here. The watchman's name was Mr. Doolin. Let's take a peek in this window. Oh wow, a good view from here, a lot less glare on the glass. Not perfect, but there is significantly less glare. Pretty cool. Now we can go up to that one, and then over to that one, and then there's the big one over there. This building also has an outhouse. Wonder if it's a two-seater like the other one. Stage station. The stage driver and his horses were housed under one roof in this building. A partition made of lumber separated the dwelling section from the barn. A small corral was attached to the south section, and the door leading into the barn could be closed in cold weather. The men who drove stage from 1904 until 1924 were John Mullen, Ed Derringer, and Alex Dyer. Alex used horses until 1915. On his first trip by Model T, the car quit him at the Derringer Ranch. He caught a ride into Ione for help, and Albert Mayette and Furman Bruner drove him back to his car and got it started. All right, so this is the charcoal yard. Thousands of sacks of charcoal were stacked in this area. The charcoal was used to fire the furnace used to assay the ore samples at the nearby assay office, and as fuel for blacksmith forges in the machine shop and at the mine. Because charcoal is easily ignited, great precaution was taken to prevent fires. The pipe fire hydrant can still be seen. It was always kept in readiness with a fire hose attached. Charcoal was made or burned in the mountains to the west. Well, after reading that plaque for the charcoal yard, I looked over that way and see a sign on the side of the hill. Kind of curious to go see what that is. There's also a pile of wood where it looks like a building used to be. All right, this is the clubhouse. The two-story building that stood here was called the clubhouse. It might have been erected to house the mine and mill office, but during the years from 1906 to 1908, it was used as quarters for visiting company officials and local surveyors that did not have families. The bedrooms were upstairs, and the lower floor was a lounge. In the years following 1945, someone removed lumber from the partition walls, thus weakening the building, and it finally collapsed. All right, now it's time to head over that way and look at the last few buildings. We'll have a look at this one right up here, and then that bigger one behind it. The Gould's Manufacturing Company, Seneca Falls, New York. Got an old car over there. I wonder if that's the very same one they mentioned on one of those plaques down there, where a guy used to make runs with a horse and carriage, and his very first trip in the Model T broke down. I don't know if that's the same car or not, but could be. All right, so this was the machine shop. This building contained the blacksmith shop and was equipped with power-driven drill presses and lathes. Therefore, it was called the machine shop. The crew of mechanics that worked here kept all the mine and mill machinery running smoothly. Occasionally, a passing automobile that had broken down was towed to its door to be put into running condition again. Yeah, back in the old days when cars were brand new, the blacksmith was usually the local auto mechanic. Oh, that's cool. I think I'll walk around the outside of this one a little bit, and we'll go look at the big one. Well, this building is mostly one large room, with the exception of this one little room over here, so the view is going to be mostly the same, but still cool to see it from a different angle. All right, let's look in through this window here. All right, I'm on my way over to the big building. I'm guessing it was maybe the stamp mill, but we'll see. I'm sure there's a plaque. Okay, so this is the Berlin Mill. It's getting very windy, so I hope the audio's okay. This building was a beehive of activity while Berlin was in its heyday. One man tended to the primary crusher and did other odd jobs. Another tended the 30 stamps and the concentration tables, and a third man fired the 5 boilers and looked after the 4 steam engines. One engine powered the primary crusher and the stamps. Another powered the concentrating tables. The third drove the direct current dynamos that supplied electricity for lights. And the fourth engine was combined with a compressor that furnished air to run the drilling rigs and pumps in the mine. The area between the mill, machine shop, and boarding house was piled high with cordwood used to fuel the boilers. Mine rail tracks were laid between the long piles of wood, and flat rack trucks rolled on the tracks to bring wood close to the boilers. Here's some more information about the Berlin Mill and a historic photo. Wow, that's the way it looked in 1910. I wish I could take a peek in there and see up high. That's about it for the town of Berlin, but this place is called the Berlin-Ichthyosaur State Park because it's famous for more than just the ghost town. Of course, today this place is known not only for the ghost town of Berlin, but also for the discovery of ichthyosaur fossils. I've got a little information about the local wildlife. These pictures look like they've been out here for quite some time, though. They're all faded with this bluish tinge. So they do have tours available at this place, but I didn't get here at the right time for a scheduled tour. However, they do still have some viewing windows, so you can peek in there even if you missed the tours. It may be hard to believe, but this is actually life-size. These ancient sea reptiles were about the size of a school bus. The fossils they found here ranged anywhere from 2 feet to 50 feet in length. In 1928, Dr. Simon Muller noticed a natural eroded hillside above Berlin, and upon further investigation, fossils were discovered. Excavations didn't begin until 1954, and they eventually unearthed nearly 40 ichthyosaur fossils. This is the most abundant concentration of ichthyosaur fossils in North America. I can only speculate as to why so much time passed between discovering fossils in 1928 and the beginning of excavation efforts in 1954. Whatever the reason, the discovery of fossils here was recognized as a significant find, and in 1957, this state park was established to preserve the fossils and the ghost town of Berlin. While I do think fossils are cool and the history of 225 million years ago is interesting, I'm still more interested in the more recent history, the ghost towns. And Berlin is not the only ghost town in this state park. There is another. Well, like I said earlier, the Berlin-Ichthyosaur State Park is not only known for having one ghost town, but two: Berlin and Union, Nevada. Although, to be honest, there's really not much left of Union these days. Union was formed in 1863, about 33 years before the town of Berlin. The Atlantic and Pacific Mining Company owned every mine in the Union mining district, and in 1865 they began construction on a 20-stamp mill. But the company went out of business before the mill was completed, and Union, which was just a small mining camp, was pretty quiet until the Berlin mine became operational in the 1890s. When Berlin started booming, Union started booming right along with it. Union was sort of like a suburb of Berlin. It's only a mile away, and a lot of people worked in the mines in Berlin, but they lived in Union. The town peaked around 1904 or 1905, and at that time there were over 20 buildings and somewhere between 200 and 250 people living here. But like so many other mining towns back in the 1800s and early 1900s, once the mines went bust, people left and the town died. Well, that's the story of Berlin, the Ichthyosaur discovery, and Union, Nevada. That's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.